I need to let you know that Steve Penico died yesterday. Many of you know Steve and Paige and their kids, Ella and Ryan and Sanjay and Kevin. Steve has had ALS for a bit of time, and for those of you that have walked that journey before with someone or know someone currently with ALS, you know that it affects your muscles and your neurons, and you begin to lose the ability with your muscles and to be able to do certain things that most people take for granted. And so without those messages getting to the muscles, things begin to twitch or waste away because of lack of use, and eventually the brain loses its ability to eat, to speak, to swallow, to breathe. And so Steve had this progressive illness, and a number of you have been very kind and gentle and supportive with the Penicos, making meals, sending cards and flowers, visiting, and belonging to them in ways that they have deeply appreciated. Even knowing what the end of the story was going to look like with ALS, Steve said that gratitude is the way to live. He rejected the notion that the prosperity gospel that says you're healthy and wealthy if you're in favor with God, and you fall out of health and wealth if you don't believe the right things. Steve said that was hogwash, and he said that some things are just hard. Some things in life are just hard, and it's not something we blame God about or blame ourselves, but to recognize and to acknowledge grief and difficulty, not to ever pretend that some things aren't awful, not to suggest that if we just had more faith, then we would be fine. And he said that part of what God does is give us solace and give us strength for the unavoidably depressing things that happen in our lives and in the lives of others and in the world. Likely, the memorial service will be a week from tomorrow here. We'll send more details about that. Some of the songs that Steve is thinking about include How Great Thou Art, Deep River, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and It's a Wonderful World. He was a teacher to me in the last year and a half, helping me to understand how sometimes things are awful, but we can be grateful and we can be committed to each other. And he taught me a lesson of patience, because that sometimes is not something that's right there for me. He taught me when he was unable to speak and had to use his communication board that he filled having banked his voice previously. He taught me how to really be present to a conversation, because it took him a while to spell out words and then to get the right place where the words could be spoken. And using that communication device made the conversations deep and wide, and we made room for each other, and we waited, and there were pauses. There are so infrequent pauses in the ways that we live now. And so I will continually be grateful to Steve for that lesson and for so many other things. He served on our church council. He was in our choir. He was involved in all kinds of outreach things that we did. And we look forward to celebrating his life and continuing to rally around his family. Jesus is a lot of things, and a teacher is one of them. And so this story that Bill shared with us this morning is from the last chapter of the Gospel of John. And it's like Jesus is giving a review at the end of the semester to the disciples, kind of reminding them of the things that are of God, the things that they shared together, and was sending them out with that knowledge, with that awareness, with those priorities, and with those understandings. And for the record, because I know that this is recorded, I want to say that I've been working with our 19-year-old son, preparing for his sociology final. We've been going through flashcards about race and ethnicity, gender and sexuality. Not afraid to talk about race and ethnicity, sexuality, gender. These are important things for us to continue to talk about. But that's just a little aside. So Jesus was wrapping up his earthly ministry with the disciples and again was telling them to feed people and to tend to people. Feeding is no surprise because he talked about that and did that throughout his whole ministry, always eager to be sure that people had enough. And sometimes he created miracles so that there was enough food for everyone and leftovers. There is more than enough food if we're willing to share it. And he invited people to the table, to feasts and celebrations like no other. And he made sure that people who often were left out of feasts, unwelcomed, pushed out, were actually first to come to the table. And then this idea of tending. We tend when we pay attention. We tend to each other when we act as servants or attendants. We tend to people when we listen, when we care for them, when we watch over them, when we oversee them, when we stand by in readiness to prevent mischance, to prevent problems. We tend to them. We watch them. We wait for opportunities. We serve them. And so Jesus was talking not about just food, but also tending to people in their spirit and with their emotions and with their past and with their dreams and hopes and concerns about the future and in the moment, living in that moment with people. So we said in the call to worship, you'd think by now we'd get used to Jesus coming. You'd think by now we'd get used to the things that Jesus said. But somehow, as humans, limited as we are, we forget and we're surprised when he shows up. And so the disciples there on that day, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks after Easter, are back to doing their normal things. 7 of them, including Thomas this time, we don't know where the other disciples are. They are out there fishing. They've been fishing all night. They have no luck. They didn't catch a thing. We're told they're tired. Surely they're disappointed. They're frustrated. And just after daybreak, they see on the shore someone who's looking at them and calling to them, and they don't know that it's Jesus. Several times in the Gospels, Jesus is not known to the people, even though he was intimately connected to them. We don't know if he changed in his appearance after the Good Friday saga and Easter, or if maybe the vision of the disciples changed, but somehow multiple times people didn't recognize Jesus when he was right there in front of them. And then he gives them advice to fish on the other side of the boat, to drop their nets on the right side of the boat, and plenty is the result. They can hardly pull in all of the fish that they catch. And then they come ashore with their heavy boats and nets, and they see that there's a charcoal fire, and they see that someone is cooking fish and bread for them, and then they're asked to add to what's being cooked, to take some of their own gifts and plenty that they just received, reminding us, like the boy with the bread and the fish that fed more than 5,000 people. And then Jesus says, "Come and have breakfast." It's a very common, ordinary thing. And Jesus is apparently a chef too, not just a teacher. And so he says, "Come and have breakfast." And then somehow they figure out that it's Jesus. But none of them want to say anything because that would be admitting that they didn't realize at first that it was Jesus. And then they eat together. And then Jesus asks questions to Peter. The same question 3 times, "Do you love me?" And we imagine Peter getting frustrated, disappointed, sad that Jesus has to ask him so many times. Why doesn't Jesus believe him? But one of the things that scholars tell us is that Jesus was giving Peter the opportunity to erase the times when he denied Jesus in what we call Holy Week. When Peter was asked if he was one of them, "Are you with Jesus?" 3 times he denied. And so this very public opportunity with all the other disciples there on the shore, having had breakfast together, Jesus is saying, let's erase the past. Let's set aside the shortcomings that you have had. Let's focus more on our relationship and on the future and how you can be present to each other. A fresh start, giving restart energy, feeding them, nurturing them, encouraging them, because Jesus knows this is an ending and this is a beginning. And the disciples know that these post-resurrection experiences are probably not going to keep happening over and over again. They're going to have to move out and do this work themselves. And so Jesus meets those disciples where they are, nurturing their body, nurturing their minds, nurturing their spirits, not just feeding them, but tending to them and clearing away the stumbling blocks, because surely with those denials and with the fleeing that they did, they feel inadequate. And so Jesus is trying to erase all of that and move them forward. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And how you love me shows up in how you love each other, how you feed each other, how you meet the basic human needs of the people around you and of the people across lands and oceans. Make no mistake about it, Jesus is very clear that we have to feed people. And all of the things we're hearing about people not being fed and all the plans to keep people hungry are unacceptable. We must find ways to continue to feed people and meet their basic human needs. And then some. We need to tend to them, which is more than just their basic human needs, to be committed to their wholeness, to their fullness, to their spirits, to be committed to their grief, to be committed to their skills and gifts and resources, to be committed to the way that they see things and understand things, to be committed to their cultural understandings and their idiosyncrasies, and again, their failures and shortcomings and stumbling blocks. We have to be able to, willing to, committed to tend to each other for full nurture, not just body, but mind and spirit. And so look for opportunities. There are plenty. Look for opportunities to feed each other and to tend to each other. And finally, at the end of the story, Jesus says, "Follow me. Watch me. You've been with me all along. You know what to do. You know the words to use, the actions to take. You know how to use power. You know how to use authority. You know how to listen. You know how to call people to attention. You know how to make room for miracle. You know how to make space for the Holy Spirit. You know how to forgive people and to be gentle with each other and to belong to each other. You know how to call each other by name. You know how to set a table. You know how to do these things because I've showed you and I've told you stories and you've watched me. You've been part of it. And so now go and do these things. Feed and tend and love." Please pray with us. Holy One, we give you thanks that we are people who have seen you in action, who are available to the things that you have said and done, and the things that you've left unsaid and undone. We thank you that there are those who model themselves after you, who echo your words and ways. And so help us to see the teachers and the guides who are putting into practice your faith, your ways of knowing, your ways of loving, your ways of building and repairing, your ways of possibility and peace. We make room, Holy One, for the gifts of the Spirit that bring us together, that allow us to lean on you and to be filled to overflow by you. Indeed, O God, we live in a day like the disciples lived, a day when there is hunger, a day when there is loneliness and grief, a day when there is pain and doubt, a day when power is misused, and when there are sweet possibilities, and when we can find ways to connect and to build and rebuild community. And so, God, send us out. Here, having shared the end of the Gospel of John, after these post-resurrection experiences, knowing that it is now on us to bring you into places, to bring Christ-like graces, to bring food and tending, to bring care and compassion, to meet people where they are, to find ways to listen and to love them, and in the process, to be heard and healed ourselves.